All right, buckle up, guys, because this story still gives me the serious chills, even years later. I gotta preface this. I am a man of logic, a professional angler who spends half his life in the wild. I don't believe in ghosts or monsters or that campfire BS. The only things that scare me are broken gear, bad weather, and alligator teeth. Until I met the Black Hole. This place is a deep limestone sinkhole lake, way out in the middle of nowhere in rural Florida. It's about 2 hours west of Miami, but once you cross the county line, it feels like you've warped to another planet. It's famous for two things: record-breaking massive flathead catfish and some seriously dark local legends. The locals just call it Jasper's Black Hole because, seriously, it's a deep, impenetrable circle of dark water. The fishing maps say the lake is over 300 feet deep, just 10 yards off the rocky bank. It's genuinely bottomless water, and the air around it always has this faint smell of sulfur and wet earth. My buddy Leo was obsessed. Leo is that guy who chases legends. He was still salty because he lost a catfish he swore was over 80 pounds the fall before. It stripped his line clean, and he was convinced it was still down there, waiting. "This is it, man," Leo kept saying on the drive over. "We're gonna beat that monster. I brought steel-braided cable this time." I was skeptical. I've seen big fish, but Leo's obsession was starting to get to me. We got there just as the sun was setting, painting the sky a beautiful but deceptive burning orange and deep purple. The air was thick and humid with the smell of cypress trees, but the water itself felt cold, almost refrigerated. We set up camp about 50 feet from the water's edge, and as soon as the campfire was going, that heavy, unsettling feeling started to creep in. I was telling myself, this is why people believe in ghosts. It's just the stillness, the dark, and the pure emptiness of this place messing with my head. I tried to rationalize it, push past the weird vibes. It's just a lake, a deep, black lake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness wasn't just a lack of light, it was an actual presence. We cast out our lines right as the last bit of light disappeared. We were using heavy rods, massive circle hooks, and fresh bait, hoping to lure that giant catfish. Everything was quiet for the first hour. It was about 10:30 p.m. The campfire had burned down to a beautiful bed of glowing embers, and we were just sitting there, sipping warm beer, listening to the insects. Suddenly, Leo tensed up next to me. "Did you hear that?" he asked. The excitement was gone from his voice. It was tight, even a little scared. I listened hard. Nothing but the usual night sounds. "Hear what, man? Just crickets." "No, dude, listen." He leaned in, whispering. "A sound, like someone calling my name. A woman's voice, really quiet, like it came from out on the water, then dipped down." I frowned. Must be the wind, or maybe the beer. But then I heard it too. It wasn't exactly a voice. It was a sound that seemed to come not from the surface, but from the depth. A low, resonant boom, boom. A powerful, low-frequency thrum that was almost too low to hear, but felt like a pressure on my chest. It was like some colossal creature taking a suppressed breath. It came from the very center of the black hole. I couldn't help but wonder, what is that vibration? That's not a boat motor. There are no boats out here, and it's definitely not a fish. It sounds organic, but wrong. Leo's eyes were wide. He grabbed his high-powered headlamp and shot the beam straight into the middle of the lake. The light barely penetrated the pitch-black water before it was swallowed by the darkness. We couldn't see anything, but the sound was closer. Vroom. Vroom. Slow. Deliberate. Then one of Leo's rods, which he had anchored to a huge rock, started to shake. Not just a tremor, but a continuous, violent shaking that rattled the aluminum reel seat. The fishing line was taut, too taut. "Fish on!" Leo yelled, but his voice cracked. He snatched the rod and tried to reel. Nothing budged. "You're snagged, Leo! You got caught on a log!" I yelled over the rattling rod. "No, dude, this isn't a snag!" Leo gritted his teeth, his muscles bulging. "It's pulling back! It's heavy, but it's not fighting! It's just pulling!" The line wasn't peeling off in quick bursts like a normal catfish trying to escape. Instead, it was a slow, agonizing, continuous pull that dragged the tip of Leo's heavy-duty rod straight down towards the water. It looked like something down there was slowly, systematically walking away with the hook. I felt a real primal terror. This wasn't fishing. This was something else entirely. It felt like whatever was down there knew we were here, and it was asserting its dominance. Leo was struggling, his boots slipping on the slick limestone. He screamed in frustration, trying to reclaim even an inch of line, but the rod was almost bent double. "Cut it! Cut the line, Leo!" I shouted. Just as I reached for his knife, the line snapped with a sound like a gunshot. Crack! The tension released, sending Leo stumbling backward. The heavy rod flew out of his hand and clattered onto the rocks. We stood there panting, sweating with adrenaline. Leo stared down at the water, which was now flat and still again, like a sheet of black silk. "Did you see it?" Leo whispered, his voice hoarse. "See what? The splash?" "No, the bubble," he pointed with a shaky finger. It wasn't an air bubble, man. It was milky yellow. It came up right where the line broke, and it was the size of a damn bowling ball. Before I could process the image of a sickly, yellowish grease bubble, it popped. A cold, awful gust of gas hit our faces. It smelled of rusted metal, sulfur, and worst of all, damp, decaying meat. It was a smell that punched you in the sinuses and just stayed there. I didn't need any more convincing. I grabbed Leo's jacket. "We're done. Get up right now." We hastily packed the essentials, abandoning the expensive rod and tackle box. We bolted back to the truck. And as I was firing up the engine, Leo, who was already buckled in, screamed, "Look!" I glanced in the side mirror, which was perfectly angled towards the lake's edge. The water was perfectly flat, but right where we had been fishing, on the rocky ledge, I swear on my life, I saw a tall, blurred black shape against the night sky. It was too tall to be a bear, too motionless to be an animal. It just stood there, a wavering, dark figure against the starless night sky, staring right at the truck. It looked almost elongated. I slammed the truck into reverse, spun the wheel, and floored it out of there, kicking up gravel and dust. We didn't stop driving until we hit the highway 50 miles away. To this day, I can't explain the sound, the yellow bubble, or that sickening smell. But what really haunts me is what happened the next morning. Leo called the local sheriff's office to report the expensive fishing gear stolen. The deputy on the phone said, "Oh, the black hole? Nobody goes there after dark. That's where they used to dump bodies back in the 50s. The quicksand and deep currents keep them. They say if you hook one, it'll just pull the gear right down." I'm left with this horrifying question. If it wasn't a fish and it wasn't a snag, what was strong enough to nearly drag a grown man into a bottomless pit? And what made it stand on the bank watching us leave after it had claimed our gear for the eternal dark?
All right, listen up. This story, the one about the 13th Pier, it feels closer, more personal. It happened at this old weathered fishing pier near Galveston Bay, Texas. My older brother, Tom, and I had decided to head out for some serious drum fishing one Sunday night. We're both hardcore anglers, but this spot, it had a really bad vibe. The pier itself is miles long, and it has this one dead-end section that's been boarded off. They call it Pier 13. It's sealed with ugly, rotting plywood and a rusty chain wrapped around it. Local legend says a fisherman jumped off there years ago, but nobody knows the real story. It's just this dark hole in the local history. It was a late, waning crescent moon, and the fog that night was intense, a heavy, damp mist that rolled over the water like a wet woolen blanket. The few streetlights on the pier had quit working about 50 yards before the barricade, so everything past that point was just pitch darkness. We walked way out, stopping just before the chained-off section of Pier 13. I kept finding myself staring at the restricted area. Tom scoffed, pulling his beanie down over his ears. "What are you staring at? The drum aren't hiding behind the barrier, dude." "I don't know, Tom. I just feel like someone is watching us from inside that fog." We set our rod holders up about 10 feet from the barrier. The mist was so thick, the beams from our headlamps only traveled a few feet before being diffused into a haze. It was perfect isolation, just us, the gentle lapping of the waves below, and the ominous black void behind us. It was around 1 a.m. when the seriously weird stuff started. My rod was resting in the holder, then it started to twitch. It wasn't the strong, confident yank of a good fish taking the bait. It was a small, continuous tremor, like something was very tentatively testing the wire. It reminded me of the sound of a fingernail lightly dragging across a metal surface. I reeled it in. Nothing. The bait was still there, untouched. I cast it back out, and 10 seconds later the tremor started again. I did this 4 times, same result every time. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. On the 5th pull, I retrieved something black and ragged caught on the hook. It was a piece of heavy, waterlogged felt fabric, partially decayed. I was immediately suspicious. How does an old piece of cloth get hooked so far offshore with a tiny piece of shrimp for bait? Then, the tremor started again on my line, but this time it wasn't just a tremor. I heard a faint, deliberate scraping on the wooden pilings right below where I was standing. That noise sounds too methodical. I shined my flashlight down, but the fog and the water were too dark. The scraping continued, moving slowly up the piling just out of our sight. Tom, who'd been messing with his reel, froze. "That's not water, Tom. It's something climbing." The sound stopped directly under our feet. The scraping stopped entirely. My line suddenly went stone-dead heavy, as if I'd hooked a massive anchor. I pulled, but it wouldn't budge. "Tom, help me! I'm snagged, but it feels like a truck." Tom rushed over and we both pulled. The line stretched so tight it made a sickening, high-pitched scree sound. Then the resistance gave. I reeled it in. The hook was gone. The sinker was gone, and the end of the line was shredded and frayed, as if something had meticulously chewed or rubbed straight through the braided steel core. We stared at each other, instantly pale. Braided line does not just shred like that. But the absolute worst, most chilling moment was when we were packing our stuff. A small, distorted moan echoed from the darkness of the chained-off Pier 13. "My old piece." The voice sounded like wind whistling through broken teeth, and it came directly from the thick, inky gloom of the forbidden pier. We didn't exchange another word. We packed our gear in 30 seconds flat, leaving the shredded line and the damp piece of felt on the deck. We sprinted off that pier, not stopping until we reached the safety of the main parking lot lights. To this day, the questions haunt me. What was that piece of old felt, and who or what called it theirs? Was the fisherman who jumped still down there, and did he not want us fishing on his territory? Or was there something else that pulled him down, and it had simply retrieved its old toy? I've never gone back, and I never will. Pier 13 isn't just a place where someone died. It's a place where something waits. All right, listen up. This story takes us deep into the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, a completely different vibe from the humid swamps of Florida or the coast of Galveston. Last summer, I decided to take a solo trout fishing trip, and I picked out Serene Lake. The name says it all. It truly is serene, tucked deep into the Tahoe National Forest, far from any established campgrounds and trails. I craved that absolute solitude, so I paddled my red kayak right out to the middle of the lake. It took me almost an hour of slow, steady rowing just to make sure I couldn't see any signs of civilization. It was a hot summer afternoon, but the mountain air was dry and clean. Everything was eerily quiet, broken only by the gentle swish of my paddle dipping into the water and the distant buzz of insects. I dropped my line, locked the reel, and leaned back into the comfortable seat of my kayak. I closed my eyes, letting the warm sun hit my face. I felt like I was the last person left on Earth. That's the ultimate feeling any angler wants. No phone pings, no engine noise, just pure silence. I stayed there for about half an hour, completely unwound. The kayak drifted lazily on the glassy, deep blue surface. About 30 minutes later, that piece shattered. I heard a sound of water being displaced in the distance. It wasn't the splash of a trout jumping. It was the deliberate, slow sound of something parting the water. I snapped my eyes open. At a distance of about 50 yards, a head was emerging from the surface. I wasn't scared yet, just annoyed that my solitude was broken. I sat up straight, waving my hand. "Hey, what's going on? Need help?" I yelled, but my voice sounded thin and lost over the water. No answer. I looked harder. At first, I thought it was a large beaver, a lost hound, or maybe a black bear trying to swim across the lake. But then I realized its shape was too elevated for an animal. It was swimming very slowly, rhythmically, with no sign of panic or thrashing. It was moving in a straight line. I reached for the pair of binoculars I keep strapped near my seat. I adjusted the focus through the faint, shimmering heat haze above the water. When I looked through the lenses, my heart seemed to seize up. It was a human head, but its skin was a sickening gray blue, like wet clay or putty. It had no hair, and the top of the head was slightly pointed. The most terrifying feature was its eyes. They were too large, black and round, like the eyes of a deep-sea fish or some kind of amphibian. They bulged slightly, and there were no visible eyelids. And its mouth, it was unnaturally wide, revealing rows of small, needle-sharp teeth. What the hell is going on? Is this some kind of sick joke? The head stopped swimming. It just bobbed, completely stationary in the water. Then it slowly, very slowly, turned toward me. It rotated in a way that seemed to bypass the neck, like an object without joints. I felt an intense coldness, despite the heat of the day, like a cold electric current had run through my veins. I knew, instinctively, that whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. It was something that had lived underwater for too long, a thing warped by darkness and pressure. It wasn't a fish, it was a predator. The moment it finished turning and looked at me, the creature started swimming. Its movement was the most horrifying part. It wasn't thrashing, it glided through the water with an unsettling smoothness, like a snake or a small submersible. It made barely any splash. Its speed increased. 50 yards, 40 yards, 30 yards. I abandoned my fishing rod. Trout or anything else no longer mattered, and grabbed my paddle. "Stay away from me!" I screamed, but my voice was so shaky, it came out as a pathetic, strangled whimper. I spun the kayak toward the shore and paddled with sheer, unadulterated panic. I'm a fit man, and I'd paddled with the strength of pure adrenaline. The kayak shot across the surface, leaving a wide, white wake. But the sound of disturbed water behind me grew louder, and it wasn't my paddle. It was the sound of something forcefully pushing water aside. I couldn't resist one final look over my shoulder. The thing had closed the gap to just 10 yards. Now I could see it clearly. It had shoulders and arms, but the arms were unnaturally long, almost reaching its knees if it were standing, and its nail clips were sharp and stark white. As it swam, its back was slightly hunched, and the most chilling detail, it never blinked. Those huge black eyes were wide open, locked entirely on me. Luckily, I hit the shallow water zone. I didn't bother beaching the boat. I launched myself out of the kayak, the cold water chilling me to the bone, and just scrambled toward the shore without looking back for any of my gear. I left the kayak, the rod, everything to drift. I ran, like a hunted deer, until I reached my truck. I cranked the engine and drove off, not daring to check my rear-view mirror. I never went back to Serene Lake.
I sold my red kayak on Craigslist the next week for a fraction of the cost. And every time I look into a dark, deep body of water, I'm haunted by this question. If it wasn't a fish, not an animal, and certainly not a man, what kind of grotesque thing is lurking at the bottom of our quiet, tranquil lakes? Are there other lakes too, with forgotten predators just waiting for the solitude of one fisherman?